All right, now you should have looked at a flexible approach for sculpting and a controlled approach. Now we're going to get in and start to just iterate through heads and see how we can work with this in a real flexible way, put anatomy in, take anatomy out, and when we encounter anatomy problems, what we can do. But we're going to do all of this from a very simple, very direct way that anybody can really start to do it at any level, right? So we're going to use the move brush and a simple sphere. I just went into Lightbox and went into simple sphere. I think it's called default sphere. So symmetry is on. If it's not, go transform, activate symmetry. And we're going to pull out the jaw. But as a rule of thumb, I don't like to pull the jaw out too far. I kind of pull it back. And that's just because as sculptors, we tend to add detail, so we're going to move out this way. And if you ever have a sculpt that looks kind of like this, that's what happened. You were just adding and adding. So we'll come in and get this, kind of start to get this chunked. I'm going to turn dynamic off up here so that I can do a lot more. Now at this stage, we're starting to develop a lot of character of this guy. So I'm going to start to get some of the jaw. And I'm going to start to make this guy a real square-headed guy with a bit of a chrome dome. And that's all I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of jaw, cranium. Those are the two simple shapes that are on my mind. And not anatomy. I'm looking at jaw, but I'm thinking of jaw as basically like this steel trap. I'm thinking of it as this real simple, primitive shape. Not the mandible and the ramus and the angle and the olivar, you know, all of this random stuff. Not random, but all this other stuff. I'm not thinking about it. I'm thinking about cranium, that egg shape, and I'm thinking about this basket at the bottom. Cool. Now, we've got that. Let's leave that, and let's come over here and see if we can do a baby, which is almost the exact opposite of this, right? So the little tiny jaws, and then they've got this big cranium, which is actually more like it's a little flat at the top, which is, it still just boggles my mind when I look at my boy, and I just see this kind of alien skull. And they have this alien skull for a long time, years. Nuchal ligament. Okay, he's got some real serious. They have this like real serious bulge of the cheek, which kind of comes back and adds all this volume, and then big old forehead. Face definitely drops back. So we're going to kind of flatten this and kind of quickly descend to these little tiny jaws, little tiny face in there. The big cheeks. See how those cheeks just help instantly set it up? Little tiny shapes like that. Square, a cheek, and then a little dimple for a chin. That's really what we're doing with a baby. So just getting those simple things there. And I'm going to duplicate this again. And now let's try to make this more of a female. Real simple, right? I mean, here I am. We haven't even started to sculpt a head. And I'm showing you all this stuff. But that's because I want to show you how you do this in a fast, simple, really approachable way that doesn't involve a ton of anatomy and anybody can kind of do. So you get your simple shapes. Make sure your draw angle is set closer to 25 or 50. Ends up making a big difference. Da 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 da. Little bit of adjustment of the silhouette as I go around, right? And then let's adjust this silhouette as I go around. Okay, no ears necessarily. But there, right? Maybe can move that in a little bit and move that there. And then look at this from a front. Get that a little bit less volume. I'm just smoothing that out. That's a quick way. And there we go. So as a woman, we've got this a little bit thinner, and forms are overall cleaner and down to more of a point. It's much more of a feminine jaw there. These are the kinds of little things. If you can do these in and of themselves, they just show up in your sculpt, and you don't have to do all that hard work of editing it. Now, let's go back to our crazy big jawed dude. I'm going to go into clay buildup. I'm going to start to do something very specific, and this is a strategy that I have. Now, you have to know your proportions. Eyes are at the halfway. Where's that dang nose? How do I place the nose? Okay, I'm going to tell you something. It's a strategy, okay? And it'll help bring the position of the nose into your mind and your nervous system a little bit better. The bottom of the nose lines up with cheeks. Now, I could tell you the measurement, but the measurements for the nose are complicated. They're convoluted. They're kind of insane. But this one thing is going to help you. Trust me. Look at the people around you. Look at yourself. Feel underneath your nose. I'm doing it right now. Feel underneath your nose and draw a straight line out to your cheek. Straight line out to your cheek. Do you feel the bottom of your zygomatic? Perhaps. Perhaps I do. So now you've got, you know your eyes are somewhere around here. The nose, where do I put the nose? It always flows. Chances are it's always adjusted and you've had to refine it, right? Don't put the nose first. Put the cheek. And then from the cheek you now have the nose. And you've got some remainder for the mouth. Okay? Now, one of the neat things about the cheek is, look at this measurement. Okay, let's say our eyes somewhere around that. So we've got our halfway point for the eye. Boom. You take this half and you take it down another half. What? This isn't necessarily the position all the time. You and I know that. 100 years ago, they would have talked about the ideal male face. Hello, welcome World War II and eugenics. Let's not go there. There is no ideal human face. Okay? Let's just say this is a good average face. And call it even without all the trauma. Let's say down, 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 half, half. And that's going to give us something where we will go up or down from there. And you can go up or down. Your cheek doesn't have to be there. Somebody's high cheeks, what does that mean? Well, it means the bulk of it is kind of a little bit higher. A little bit emphasized. Not necessarily higher because it's more of a visual trick, but there's adjustment in ways for us to play. Enough said. I'm going to put the orbit of the eye in. I got my halfway points. I got my perspective in the right place. Oh, let me reset all my brushes. I've been playing around. Takes a second. Okay. Clay buildup. Now, when I do this, I got another strategy for you. I'm going to make it small. I'm not going to do this. Hey, I got a big orbit of the eye, because now you got to add stuff back in and things get crazy. Keep it small. Okay. Right there, I have now set up a whole bunch of stuff. It's really neat what I've done. Did the orbit of the eye, and then I just crossed between them in a bit of a U shape. That set up the glabella. That oval, which is slightly angled, also set up the fat underneath the eye, and it also helped set up the frontal sphenoidal process of the maxilla. Don't you love that name? Basically, it helped set up this line that goes underneath the eye and down to the lower eye bags. I got to do one more thing. I got to pull down to establish the, you would say the nose. I'm going to establish the nose. I am not establishing the nose. I am establishing the maxilla. The maxilla. The least respected part of the face. And the most significant for determining or showcasing your ethnicity, the position of your nose relative to your eyes, whether somebody has a very deep face, whether somebody has a relatively flat face. The maxilla is something worthy of your study. Pull a straight line down and out, taking essentially 1 egg, 2 egg, and that's my cheek. Still got some room down in there. Now I'm going to pull this straight down and straight out, because what I'm doing right now is I'm creating a triangle that's going to eventually be the front of the face. I do this all the time, every time. So I pulled and I established the maxilla. Now I'm going to pull out and establish the rest of the front of the face. And I want to make sure that this is all straight. Boom, boom, boom. I'm setting up the nose by not even sculpting the nose. A little bit of chin. Let's just smooth this out, right? Smooth that out. Starting to get something. That's something we can build from. We can grow that. Now let's get in there and get this a little bit more worked. Now also, one of the other things you'll notice, I'm not apologizing, but you'll notice if I don't talk, I'll tend to sculpt a little bit better. That's actually just tells you that there's so many things going on. And it's also a clue for what we learn when we get better too. So I'm going to pull the nose out. In fact, I have almost no idea what I was trying to get at there, because it definitely sounds like an apology. And when I sculpt, my brain just stops functioning like normal. Especially when I'm going slow like this. It's actually a little hard for me. I experience it as a little bit of a physical pain to go slow like that. But it's really important to me that you see this process slowly. And that I see it slowly too, you know. You'll see. We're going to get something. Now, I pulled the nose out using clay buildup, and I would basically add, subtract, add, and subtract, okay? I added basically a down plane. Let's draw that proper. And I carved this in even more. Right? And then I'm going to work the side plane. I'm going to avoid nostrils. Please avoid nostrils. Really important, actually, to avoid them. And then in this eye area, we're going to do kind of a little bit of a trick. There's a couple of elements. So there's this circle that goes underneath the eye, and then there's another circle that goes and starts to separate the orbit of the eye from the side of the nose. So you got to do kind of another little circle, but this one kind of wraps around in this way. It's a really neat little trick. I'm going to kind of try to get that ASAP, because if you get that, it starts to do all kinds of things for you automatically. It's really a lot of fun. There you go. See that? So that's what I'm going to try to keep. And when I sculpt, I try to put that in, even if it's not entirely obvious. Okay, a mound for the lips. Got to start to cut in to help that mound exist. And now we really got it. This is a very flat face. Okay, very flat face. I can start to get some more depth by basically taking the mound of the mouth forward. But let's take a look at some of the measurements and things. Now, yours might be flat. You might have fixed this already. Mine's flat because I was talking, and that just led to it me missing a couple of beats. Now, I like to make sure what we're going to do is orbit of the eye, cheek, zygomatic, and chin. This diagonal and this three-part curve, it fits into everything that I sculpt. Try to get that diagonal and that three-point curve. The three-point curve will really help set you up for all of that stuff too. And I'm just going to do that real quick with the clay buildup. I'll just kind of, from a 3/4 view, push that back. And you see my stroke is kind of following that line that I gave you. Round behind the jaw a little bit, start to suggest an ear. Ears can be suggested and done many ways. But clay buildup is really just a great way to get just a little cup for the ear. Then come around the top to push in. Separate the ear from the face. Start to separate out the cheekbone. Start to get that jaw a little bit. There, I'm just going to put that master in. Awesome. And start to get just some suggestions in here. I'm going to put a little bit of this frontal bone that's going into a sagittal crest. It doesn't need to be really big. And then I like to put a line that separates the forehead, breaks it up into two. Nuchal ligament. There we go. Okay, starting to get somewhere. I'm going to switch over to BS3/3 brush. Where to put the mouth? You got some choices, right? Halfway. Okay, but if you looked at the anatomy, one of the measurements I like to look at is halfway is basically the middle of the bottom lip. So the line is actually higher. And there's a couple of things that tend to get screwed up in our brains. We tend to lengthen the upper lip. So consider that as you're doing this, and see if you can kind of push up a little higher than you're comfortable with. It'll take some experimenting, but eventually you'll just kind of get it right. Now, I did a couple of important lines. I cut one across, and then I emphasized here where the green is. I emphasized those areas. A couple of lines across, and then I emphasized in those areas to help me really pinpoint where all of this was going. Corner of the mouth, it's really good to just dig those in. And then, once you've dug them in, then you can pull out what's called the marionette line. And then you can start to smooth things so that you have proper relations, so that the upper lip is dominant over the lower lip. Okay, it's an overlaps. In traditional sculpting, they'll tell you about these kinds of things. Less so in digital speak because they just it doesn't have that old world stuff. Overlaps are really significant. In nature, one form is always over another. If they're right up against each other, when's the last time you seen a mountain range and they were both like boom, boom? No, that's a pyramid or something else, but that's a pyramid basically. A mountain range always is one's over the other, and then they've got cascading rhythms of things kind of overarching and running into each other. Everything's overlapping. Same in the human body, right? Because we're just another part of nature. Now, we've established the overlap there. What's my next overlap? My next overlap is going to be behind the nostril. See, I didn't carve a nostril in there. I didn't put one in there. I've just started to put the opening for the nose, and now I'm going to start to kind of define that nasolabial fold. And I'm going to put in this little guy right here. It's called the alar facial juncture. I'm telling you these things. I put them in automatically now, and that's what I want you to eventually do. So in the beginning it'll be a little crazy. You won't put them in. Now I'm going to build this eye back up, right? I did it this way so that you could kind of see some of the skeleton. And if you do this the way I did it, chances are your eyes are going to start to expand and become too large. So work with me on this and how we're going to start to kind of try to get this eye to be back a little bit smaller. I really want it to be a small eye. In fact, with this guy, I'm literally going to try to make the smallest eyes I possibly can and push myself to really see how tiny human eyes can really be in the flesh of the face. Look at Leonardo DiCaprio after he's been in Ibiza for a little bit too long perhaps, right? Face just fills out, strains, and you can see it straining around the cheekbone, right? In our case, we put the cheekbone high and did that. That's a mistake now that I'm talking about it. The cheekbone literally becomes like the low point as the flesh is straining out away from that and bulging out around the masseter, and then you've got this little bony landmark of the cheek kind of rooted in a sea of flesh. Another trick, another thing, I'm giving them to you rapid fire. Stop, rewind, and play, okay? I started to make a mistake. I started to put the eye in the center of the orbit of the eye. That's a mistake. If you do that, you will go wrong. I will tell you right now exactly what will happen. I have seen over 10,000 students at UArtsy. You will make this mistake if you do what I'm saying. If you put the eye in the center, then you're going to put the orbit of the eye there. You're going to put the eyebrow fat here, and then you're going to be wondering, man, it's a lot of space above that upper eye. And then you start putting in the lower lid, and then you start to notice, hey, the lower lid, there's not a lot of space there. There's a lot of space, not a lot of space here. So what do? Of course, the wrong thing. You pull the nose down, and then the nose starts to impede on the face. So then we start to do this. We go like, oh, I got to move this down. Yeah, no, that's, okay, much better. Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm getting this better. Okay, and so now all of this starts to have to go down, right? And then next thing you know, your measurements have been shot to hell. They're not at the halfway point anymore. In this guy's case, we'd screwed that up a long time ago. So let's undo that. And let's get rid of this like Cro-Magnon thing we got going on. Put the eyes back at the halfway point, but they're slightly higher. So by that, I mean put the eye here. Tuck it up underneath the brow. Again, there's always an overlap. The brow is overlapping the eye. Why is it doing that? For protection. Somebody hits you, you get hit by a falling rock or something coming down in a tree, something from above. Your eye is protected. Your brain, different story. But at least you got eyeballs. So I'm going to use clay buildup. I'm going to kind of start to put an eye in there, right? Smooth it out, but I'm going to start to put that eye in. There we go. And this guy is like a mess. It's all kind of, and then this is going to magically leave you with some space for the lower eyelid and the eye bags, and you're going to be like, oh wow, I didn't realize there was that many. There was that much space underneath there. So you'll start discovering all kinds of new things. So now we're going to divide this model. Look at how rough it is. Now, a professional sculptor knows what to focus on because you gotta get the job done. The job means I got to do this for a client, I got to do this for a boss. That's one thing, right? But there's also the professional sculptor who's fine art, who's trying to do something in terms of their vision. You got to also know what to focus on, because right now there's about 20,000 things wrong with this, and I have learned over time not to focus on these. I'm not looking at what's wrong. Okay, there's a concept that I like to talk about matching and mismatching. Not going to share too much with it right now because it's its own whole separate beast. But basically, we are taught as we learn to sculpt to mismatch, find out what's wrong. We're not taught to find out what's right. And so we can spend a lot of time fixing things and trying to be somebody that's just not going to work for us. Now, what am I doing right now? I'm kind of filling in a bunch of things. I'm starting to establish zones, areas, curvature, right? Cool. So I'm going to start to cut stuff in. I'm going to establish some, I'm just doing some more contouring, so to speak. I'm going to try to get that zygomatic bone, which has a little bit of a form right there, but then dips in. Get the cheekbone, or the cheek fat, I should say. Okay, start to kind of carve away the upper lip. I like to carve in a little space right there. It's a real subtle shape, but you'll see it has a massive impact because it starts to establish how the upper lip dives in over, or under, I should say, the nodule at the side of the mouth. Starts to establish an important hierarchy. Mentalis, a little bit of cheek. Stopped talking for a little bit, sorry, dropping the brow, putting a little bit of eye fat in there. Switching over to the standard brush, going to start to put in a little bit of eye and go out to the caruncula and start to define some of these things. Drop down, start to create some of the separations. Yeah, that might look crazy, but look a little closer. There's an eye, caruncula, and separation between the upper lip and the rest of the orbit of the eye. There's a lot that's done there. And the more you can do at a lower level like this, the better off you're going to be when you actually have to create this form. You're going to just start to have some magical superpowers. Switching over to the move brush, right? Because this is just that's too far gone. Got a lot going on with this dude. A lot. Now I got to add more details and all kinds of stuff. This point, something starts to fail me. The clay buildup brush starts to fail me. Now, I've also been going slow, contouring this with the idea of being able to illustrate this to you. Okay, but we're going to work our way to where things start to become less and less obvious. What I'm doing becomes less and less visible. Okay, not right now. This is all very visible process, what I've been doing. All the forms are quite clear, or not quite clear, but they're quite out there in the open for you. I'm going to try something. I'm going to divide this. And now I want to see if I can start to get some realism in this. The clay buildup brush is good. It's given me a lot of form and whatnot. But it started to really screw up my mojo because now it's kind of textured the whole thing. So you can consider clay polishing this. You can consider going to deformation and just polishing this. You can consider turning that into a closed circle and polish it, and it'll be a little stronger, right? Whatever you want to do. Traditional sculptors will melt form, and they'll just keep melting it, melting it, and melting it, and melting it. Okay, a painter will scrub one layer of paint over another layer, and they'll scrub one value over another value, or they'll scrape it down like Whistler. You know, there's always some kind of destructive element that, not always. Some people will build up pellet after pellet after pellet of clay. But I like to use some sort of destructive element. And I just see it as that. It's destructive. I mean, I've spent 20 minutes explaining this sculpt to you guys right now. And now I smooth it out. And this is good. This is good. I can come in with standard brush. And let's see in like 5 minutes what I can start to do. The key thing being remembering that standard brush is really adding some line quality to my process. Smooth things out. Putting 2 lines in there. Gonna add that back in. Let's put some wrinkles in there. Let's have that upper lid disappear underneath the fat fold. A little bit. It's barely visible. Better represent that nostril. How much do I need to put, though? How much form do I need to put? That's going to be one of the things that we really start to try to understand. Now I'm going to start to sculpt the lips here, and I'm going to talk a little less. Okay, you're going to see a little less of what I'm doing. But watch the build up of form, the melting down of form, and see what's left. What I'm doing is a dance between edges and form. Edges and form. So my edges are the erosion of form. I build the form up, I erode it to give me an edge. That's my dance. In this case, I'm pulling back to establish planes. I'm going to erode form around that to start to help me establish the edges I want. Adding in some form. Lowering my draw size, just pressing S. Okay, I'm going to really carve in underneath that. We're going to get a serious overhanging nose, which I may fix, I may not. We'll see. I may just use the move brush to just move it up a little bit. This area is called the columella. Neat little area to study. Now that you know it has a name, that might give you renewed impulse to study that. Something plastic surgeons adjust to help define your face. Now, areas start to get a little hard. You see that? It doesn't really want to go like I want. So there's things like the damn standard brush. See how that behaves? So I smooth something out, and then I'll use damn standard brush, and it works as a really nice way to define an edge. Okay, so I'm establishing alar cartilage, a couple of things right in that corner, and it looks like I need to start to establish a separation, side of the nose, front of the face. So I just draw straight lines down. Don't mess around. I'm just trying to get the straight line in this. See, as soon as I do that, I instantly have a talking point that separates these guys. You can use the move brush to just really hone that in if you wanted. Large brush and move the eyes in a little bit. There we go. Let's let it pause. Oops, sorry. Just made a ton of noise. And I have screwed something up. In cutting this form in, I'm messing with it. And in slowing down my thoughts, I tend to add a lot of doubt to it. This is exactly what people do when they're learning, right? I love it. I get to experience what people are doing when they're learning. All I got to do is start teaching. And instantly I get that. So I'm going to just shut up for a little bit and start to get some of that form that I really want back in there. Oops, wrong key. So gnarly. There's so much going on with that guy. I love it. Okay. Now, damn standard brush. I'm going to start to press. I'm going to press Alt to let it help me start to define an edge. Okay, we started to get these guys. I've started to get a sense of things, and we're at our little bit over our 5-minute mark. Boom, boom, boom for my hair, eyebrows. But in that 5 minutes, in that short period of time, we were able to really go to town with this and start to really define the lips, start to establish some of the volume and the behavior. One of the things that started to happen with me, I started to get really concerned with volume, and I can feel it right now. I can feel like this volume is not accurate. This curvature is not accurate. I want that curvature to be accurate. And as you do this, we are using the standard brush, and you're going to have this battle of things going on. But our job is really to be able to accommodate everything. Let that frustration be there, A lot of times that frustration will lead us to stop. Lord knows it's led me to stop many a thing. But if you can get through that and just accept that as that's just one member of my team voicing an opinion, saying he really wants volume to be accurate. Well, okay, so do I. I want volume to be accurate. We're gonna get there, guys. You're part of a team now. Sculpting is a team effort. It requires many parts of yourself. It requires an engineer, a visionary, requires a critic so you don't embarrass yourself. It requires a school teacher who's going to say you got the anatomy wrong, and you're going to say thanks for your opinion. Now get the hell out. Just kidding. There we go. Lots more to do, and that glabella's too low and then not low enough. But we're in the game. We're creating, we're sculpting, and we are seeing the problems evolve in front of us. That's my goal for you. Get in the arena. This is about getting into the arena. Sculpting something, fighting it. Volume's not right, anatomy's not right, this is working, that's not working. And you just do the best you can in this period of time, and you go from there. Now, what are we going to do next? I don't know. I would like you to stop this video and do a face. If you're at, UArtsy, post it at UArtsy. If you're getting this somewhere else, post it on my Facebook. Let's start to see where you are, where you're going with these things. You have to accept where you are. Share it. That's going to start the conversation for how you grow. And I know you have just everything inside you to accomplish this. I'm just here to guide you and kind of help bring these things out. Sculpt the face. So turn this off, sculpt the face, and let's see what the next video has for us.